Hi, welcome to this screencast on Ruby meta classes. This will be the final episode on meta classes. So let's get started. First, we're going to look at class definition. This is how we define classes. Classes in Ruby are first class objects. Each is an instance of class called class. So there is a class called class in Ruby. And when I say each is an instance of class, this is the class name, user-defined class. I can also, there is a method called new, which is defined in the class called class. New is a method defined in that particular class. So all methods, all classes that you define will allow you to instantiate using new. So when a new class is created, in this instance, when you have class name in, an object of type class is created and assigned to a global constant. So what I mean by this is doing f equals fruit.new is the same as doing fruit equals class.new. They are equivalent. So when fruit.new is called to create a new object, the new method in the class called class is run by default. Okay, let's see how this thing works, and let's play with this thing. I'll open up the class called class, and I'll alias the existing new method as old new, and then I'll override the new method, and I'll just print out saying creating a new whatever the class name is, and then I can call the new method old new, which is actually the original implementation of new. I'll just pass it along all the arguments to it. Okay, now I'll define class fruit, and then I can say f equals fruit dot new. Let's run this. It says creating new, and then it has new fruit. Okay, that this is a self dot name. Let's just make it in the same line to make it clear. There it is, creating a new fruit. So self.name in that case was this user-defined class that we have created. So that's how it works. Fruit by default invokes the new that is implemented in this class called class in Ruby. And this new can also take arguments. If you don't pass any arguments to new, basically uh, that it's actually by default it's superclass equals object. If you look at the Ruby docs, the new method would be basically has superclass equals object. Object is in the root of the hierarchy, is the parent of all other things in Ruby like module and class and all the other user different classes. Okay, so if you don't provide, by default object is the superclass, and now before we get there, I'll demonstrate how we'll I'll show this thing in a moment. Now method definition, just sidetrack for a bit. Fruit, and I can do a method definition. This is how we define the method. And there's another way to add method. We've already seen that. Another way to add methods, instead of doing this, you could also do a fruit dot class eval, and then you could add the method. Right? And module eval, let's see, f equals, before you go too far, fruit, I create an instance, and let's run this. Playing with class eval. And module eval basically it's just an alias for class eval. So you can do module eval. And the result will be the same. Both class eval and module eval don't return anything. The only purpose is to add the method in the context of this class. So it's a class method, right? So this is how you would invoke the method. Create instantiate, and you create, and then you call the method on it. Now since it gets added to the class called fruit, we are able to instantiate, and then we are able to call the peel method. Now let's look at the subclassing, as I was saying before earlier. So let's create it's a subclass of fruit, and then you can call you can override here. Let's create an instance and invoke the peel. So you would expect Apple got peel message to be printed, and that's what we get. Now this is a regular object-oriented thing. There's nothing tricky here, but now I'm going to demonstrate how the class.new, you can pass in the superclass. So let's say I want to create orange as one of the two fruits, and it extends from fruit. You can do this, and then you can instantiate orange. Now it has peel method. The peel method, if you can guess, what do you think it's going to print? Let me just comment this thing out just to be clear. So as you can see, Since the peel method is defined in the fruit, it executes that implementation. In this case, this peel method gets executed. Since we don't have a peel method in orange. So that's how you can use class.new, and you can create a subclass this way instead of creating a subclass this way using this syntax. Much more dynamic doing it this way. Okay, now we are going to move on to class methods. So if you invoke this is how you would invoke the class method, and it raises don't know. You cannot really do this undefined method planned for fruit. Since it's a class method, you can only invoke it using fruit.plant. You can also do this. That will also work. That's another syntax. Well, there is no foo this time. Fruit. So it raises don't know. So next, what happens if we do a apple.plant? Since apple is a subclass of fruit, is it going to inherit the method? Let's check. Apple.plant. Yes, it knows. Since apple is a subclass of fruit here, and we have defined the class method in the superclass fruit, apple also can use that class method. Now, apple can also decide to override this method. You can say apple.plant just return a symbol called apple tree. Now if you call apple.plant, since it just returns a symbol, we need to print that return value, and you can see this symbol is returned. So classes, modules, and objects are all interrelated. If you see the Ruby docs, there is a diagram that shows how the object and its meta class, are all structured in the diagram. All the vertical are representing the inheritance, and the parentheses showing the meta classes. Meta classes are all at the same level, like object, and there is a meta class for object at the same level, which is also called object, and it is in brackets. And then just below object you have a module. We already know what a module is. And at the same level is module meta class that is represented within brackets. It's the same module. And any other class you defined is also beneath the object in the inheritance hierarchy. And the meta class is at the same level as user-defined class. In this case, fruit. Let's say fruit. At the same level, you'll have fruit in the brackets. That would be a fruit meta class. And then beneath the module is the class called class, and at the same level there is a class within brackets that is the meta class for a class. So everyone seems to have this meta class, and all these meta classes are instances of the class called class in Ruby, and that's where all the methods gets added. And if you extend from any of this class, the way the chain is, it's going to just hook up to this chain, and it's going to be very similar to that diagram. So let's now, we already know how to access singleton class. We can do this. If you want to access a singleton for Apple, we just use this syntax. And if you want to add method to the singleton class, you can do, instead of just returning this self, we can do def plant apple tree. Let's see now what happens when we invoke apple.plant. And there it is. It returns the apple tree. And that is in the meta class for Apple. And you can also do you can, instead of adding it to the meta class, you can also do this instance eval, as you already have seen in earlier screencasts. You keep it as a block, and you can also give apple tree in this way. But this, what would happen if you print apple dot plant? I would expect this won't run. If you comment out this, we don't have that method in Apple. We only have instance method, so this won't work. But it seems to be looking at its dev plant, the Apple class. I don't have anything. Let's just nick this thing, and it's still returning apple tree. Okay, well, I see what's going on. Instead of having an instance, I am saying I want to add this method in the context of the class called apple, not the instance of apple. If that is the case, this won't work. Okay, so let's say I have a equals apple dot new, and then I say I do this. Now it won't return it. This will fail. There it is. I don't know what plant is. And if you instantiate now, but you can print now using that instance. Now you will be able to get the value of apple tree this time. So that's another way of adding it. This how the use a different class and the class called class are all related. This thing makes really clear how you can open up anything you like, and shows the classes in Ruby are first class objects. And you can do this, and you saw def tree. And if you can also use the singleton syntax, adds that to the meta class, can print the value. That also works as a class method. So that's it for the screencast, and if you enjoyed it, please recommend me on Working with Rails. Thank you.